beginning at 7:30 p.m. First item is for the staff to ascertain the presence of a quorum.
Mr. Bunkerfist?
Present.
Mr. Horke?
Here.
Mr. Khan? Dr. Keene?
Here.
Ms. Carlson? Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Mooney?
Here.
Mr. Neal?
Present.
And Mr. Woodard. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I have no changes to the agenda to announce, so we will move right along to the approval of the previous meeting minutes from January 14th, 2026. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Mr. Bunkerfist. There a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mooney. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is for staff to review the rules of procedure for our event.
Yep. Tonight's meeting is a workshop discussion meeting, so some general rules of procedures. The department will introduce the petition stating when the item was last before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission and petitioner will then discuss changes made to the ordinance. Once the discussion is finished, the department will summarize the final changes that are expected to be made prior to the petition returning to the Planning Commission for additional discussion and/or action. A few rules of conduct this evening. Please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. We would like to remind those attending virtually to please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no consent agenda items for tonight, so we move right into our two workshop items. First being 2601-ZOA-01, which is the Unified Development Ordinance sign update, presented to us this evening by Mrs. Lauren Gillingham Teague. Good evening, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. President. Let me reposition this. All righty. So I'm hoping that you guys all received my amended red line that I sent this morning. I erroneously attached, whoops. Sure, that's nothing. I accidentally attached one that did not actually show the red lines, so that's not much use for you. Once I get past these technical difficulties, I will pull up a version that shows the red line. All right, thank you for your patience. So just a quick rundown. This is the workshop meeting for the sign ordinance. This has been before you once before for public hearing. There were some comments. Starting from the end of this, the largest change made since the last meeting is a modification to the frequency and duration of the temporary freestanding signs, as well as a stipulation that they are for agricultural and non-residential uses, just encompassing the question about if it's a land for sale or an undeveloped parcel that is still zoned AGSF1. There was a question at council regarding how can we avoid some of these perpetual signs that we see around the city that they're put up, they say coming soon, nothing ever comes, and then pretty soon it's a matter of years that this sign has been on the site. We have now added a provision that in a 15-month period, a sign can be on a site for no longer than 12 months. So that could be either 2 6-month permits or 1 6-month permit and 1 6-month extension. So should there be an odd situation where you need 3 signs, we could potentially discuss that with the BZA. But this is to essentially require a 3-month cool down period. There are some minor additions pertaining to murals, again, following from the council discussion. A stipulation has been added to the mural section that it is for non-residential and non-residential and multifamily districts. There was some concern that this would open up the door for murals within residential districts. That is something that we do not regulate. That is between a homeowner and their HOA. And finally, in regards to some comments, we added prohibitions of signs affixed to accessory structures, particularly dumpster enclosures, and as well as signs affixed to movable waste containers. I've been told that there are some dumpsters around the city that have banners on them. That is to address that issue. Do you guys have any questions or anything you want to discuss?
Any comments?
I just have one
Dr.
question.
Keen, please.
And this is more procedural for staff. Is there any sort of process that you all go through to say, let's review this particular, like, sign ordinance in 10 years or in 5 years, so that we don't languish for 19 years? And, that, I realize we're trying to catch up with ourselves continuously with growth, but it just seems like there should be some sort of process so these things don't get outdated quickly.
Yeah, definitely. In Westfield, for a time, there was a end-of-year procedure where staff would look at the BZA cases from that year and kind of try to draw a trend line, where a lot of them related to pools or setbacks or signs, and see what they could do to fix the code itself rather than go to the BZA. I believe that was kind of fell out of use, but I would like to go back to that or try to do an update. This particularly was more of a just planning staff review signs. We noticed things in the code that really isn't working how intended, and eventually those things kind of add up until finally, in this instance, we had a legal reason due to the content neutrality requirements imposed by the Supreme Court. I'm getting off subject. No, we do not have an actual, like, 5-year, 10-year schedule.
But you're going to hopefully reinstitute
Yes.
the review at the end of the calendar years?
Yeah, and I'll add to that. It's not, not so much a UDO review, but the comp plan will be, when that gets, the new comp plan will recommend an annual review that our staff performs and reports back to the council. It will also include every 5 years and every 10 year, 5-year increments, to possibly do an amendment depending on what we find through those annual reviews. I would imagine part of that annual review will not just be how we're doing. Well, let me take a step backwards. Some of the recommendations that come out of the comprehensive plan will be for us to make certain amendments to the UDO, right? And part of that annual review will kind of be an assessment of how we're doing in making those changes to the UDO, for example. So while it's not directly a UDO annual review, I think that will become, at least for the first handful of years, part of that annual review, an assessment of how we're doing with UDO as it relates to supporting the comprehensive plan. So that maybe is an indirect way of answering that question that we will be building into our process. We're staffed to do that now. We weren't staffed to do that before. We were just keeping up with growth, frankly, and now we have people dedicated to help implement the comprehensive plan, and this is part of that, if that helps.
Thank you.
Related to this item, specific to the waste containers, which, I'm sorry, I can't believe I'm asking this question, but so if the primary purpose of, let's say, a dumpster is for it to be a dumpster, and then they attach a sign, which becomes secondary, that's not regulated in this fashion, yes? Because if the dumpster is moved, let's say, on a Gaylor site, and Gaylor obviously prints theirs, so it's not a sign. So there's a dumpster there from, Mike's Dumpsters, and I put a sign on it. But the reason it's there is to put stuff in it, which is the primary use. So secondary use would be, I put a sign on here also for my own advertising. That would be okay.
So in this scenario, are you advertising Mike's Dumpsters? Is it, you're providing the sign, you're providing the dumpster and also using,
Yeah. But it's secondary, right? Because it wouldn't be on the site if it wasn't being dumped into. I mean,
that is a great
we've made this
question,
as
Mike.
hard as we can make it, I know.
You know, we get this same question. We get the same question when it comes to like wrapped vehicles.
Sure.
Is somebody parking their work truck in front of their home? Is that a sign?
Yep.
And we've taken a pretty maybe conservative approach to that. That if you are parked, you know, perpendicularly in a parking lot facing a main road, yeah, it's pretty obvious that you are trying to advertise the sign and not necessarily like parking there for like innocently. I would probably follow the same logic with your dumpster question. If it's placed, you know, in the front yard of a building, close to a right of way, in an area that would not be very logical for someone to have a dumpster. If it's behind a building, you know, next to maybe other trash facilities, it gets a lot harder. I don't know if I have a good answer to that, to be honest. It's really a case-by-case basis,
Because the burden of proof would be upon government.
of course.
Further questions? Mrs. Carlson?
Yeah, I would just say all of my trucks have Nature Spire across them, and we park in a lot of different areas, not just to advertise, to access buildings or jobs or whatever. So I would not personally park somewhere just to advertise my business. I'm there for a purpose and a reason. So I think we have to give most people like the benefit of the doubt that they're for a purpose and reason, not to park illegally to advertise their business. It's just my opinion.
No, I agree. In my experience reviewing signs and working as planning staff, I can think of maybe 2 or 3 scenarios where somebody is actually parking a vehicle for advertising purposes, and usually it's like an old truck or some kind of vintage vehicle that doesn't even run very well.
So back to that then, if I'm, let's use Gaylor Electric, because they have giant Gaylor on everything. And I don't know, let's say there's a Gaylor dumpster, and as long as they print it on there or paint it on there, that wouldn't fall under this either, correct? So they could get away with it simply by painting it upon it rather than affixing a sign.
Be a mural with a logo.
What do we think?
I don't know. Where,
I'm sorry?
I'm confused. Where are these dumpsters being located? Are they temporary? Are they moving?
I'm just asking
they
general questions
permanent?
based on what I read. And the enforceability and what's the leeway as this is written. I'm just trying to get a sense of.
Are you asking about number 11 or number 12?
I'm sorry,
or
I
both?
am asking about number 12. The new 12.
The new 12.
The new 12 under the blue line.
You know, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is something we could put like, you know, parked for more than 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever we think. I don't know if that's a way to approach this.
Because I see it everywhere all the time. Construction sites, homes in my neighborhood that are getting a renovation, and they're very clearly putting an advertisement on the side of it while it's sitting there for 10 days. And so what I'm just wanting to ensure is that that piece is just thought through so that we don't back ourselves into some corner in which we can't enforce something that you have newly written.
No,
And I know that you can't exhaustively think of everything, so I'm not trying to force that. But the way this is written to me leaves 2 things: enforceability gaps on the way it's written and the potential for workarounds. All I got to do now is just print it on the side of my dumpster. And then there's nothing you can do about it because it's not a sign as written. Maybe it is, but, right? Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm putting that out there. This is,
I'll need to mull over that,
Yep,
to be
that's fine.
honest, because it would be hard for the city to go to, you know, a dumpster company and say, you can't have your logo painted
Right.
on your dumpster. They could argue that there are a multitude of good reasons why they should be allowed to have their logo on there.
logo, phone number,
Exactly.
website.
Yeah, that's a tough one to walk, to be perfectly honest.
Now, I'm not trying to be difficult. I just, as it reads, I have just questions. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the matter. Other Comments or questions from commissioners?
I just have one. I think if it's temporary, a phone number and logo is fine. I think if it's fixed, then that's a different story. And I agree with you, case by case basis.
Further comments or questions from commissioners? Seeing and hearing none. Then we will see this back for
Recommendation.
final recommendation when it comes.
Yep.
Thank you.
February 2nd is.
I'm sorry, is there any sort of recap you need to provide, or are we pretty clear on? That's okay.
Recap in terms of the discussion.
I always forget that you do that. Take those notes.
Let's see.
Heart and
There are some-
dumpsters. The signs of the beholder.
Just from this discussion, not what might change in the next ordinance. No, I think you've given us much to think about. As always, send me an email, text, voicemail, carrier pigeon. I love chatting about signs.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Moving to the next item. It's okay, it's in the record now. We will move to our next workshop item, which is 2511-PUD-19, the Ironstone Planned Unit Development. We'll start off with a staff discussion from Weston Rogers and then move to Mr. Dobashewitz for his presentation this evening.
Thank you, President, members of the commission. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is the Ironstone Planned Unit Development District. This real estate is roughly 765 acres in size. The boundaries of the zoning district, as you can see here on this location map, are generally northeast and northwest of Hortonville and southwest and northwest of the intersection at 6 Points Road and 206th Street. The proposed ordinance would permit a residential community with a mixed-use village center to be developed through the establishment of 4 districts. These districts include the Lakes, the Reserve, the Village, and the Horton Square mixed-use block. A public hearing for this item was held at the November 3rd APC meeting, and the first workshop meeting for this item was held at the December 15th APC meeting. Tonight, the item is scheduled for a second workshop discussion. John Dobashewitz of Nelson and Frankenberger is here this evening to provide an update and presentation on the matter. Both the petitioner and staff are available to answer any questions, should there be any from the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Planning Commission. For the record, John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the applicant Platinum Properties Management Company. With us this evening is Jim Schinner with our office, and I'm drawing a blank. Tim Walter, sorry. No excuses. I've only known him for 30 years. And I never say Mr. Walter, so Tim Walter with Platinum Properties is here with us this evening as well. What I wanted to do is we've got several slides to share, and I just want to update the Plan Commission on certain topics. And then there are other topics that we will cover at the next committee meeting, or workshop rather, in February or March. And those would include the Horton Square mixed-use block and the attributes and characteristics regarding that. We want to confirm with staff that with their assistance that we're in alignment, both this plan and the plan they have for Hortonville, in advance of sharing that with the Plan Commission, so we can get your feedback on a plan that staff believes is consistent with the plan for Hortonville. And it's just a matter of time before we pull that together and be in a position to share that with you. So as a recap, at the last meeting, Jonathan Nail made a presentation with regard to road improvements that are planned for the vicinity. We're continue to work on that plan with them, and we'll come back to the Plan Commission before we seek your recommendation on a finalized plan, reduced to writing, that would be attached to the ordinance by way of commitment. But to start out, the real estate that you see here outlined in yellow is 765 acres. And we advance, generally located east of both sides of 6 Points Road and both sides of Horton Road. Those are the north-south. 6 Points Road here, Horton Road here, 206 bisects the site east to west, 214th Street up here to the north. This is the Osborne Trails development, the age-restricted community. Atwater's to our south along our perimeter here. Monon Corner, we surround on 3 sides to our south. And then the outline here is predominantly Chatham Hills with those spaces in here to the east, but not adjacent and removed, with the exception of the parcel right here. The catty corner piece is the Monon Trail, and in a minute you'll see another line that bisects the site northeast to southwest, and that's a power transmission line easement, a major power transmission line easement. This is the concept plan for the development, and many of the items that we've arrived at a conclusion with staff over the last couple months have been with regard to adding specificity to the ordinance so that the plan that is shown, and both the plan and the lot distribution that is shown, is exact and it's substantial compliance with those standards rather than general compliance. In particular, with regard to, if you follow up on the screen, there's a 40-acre parcel here that's going to be included in the commitment for donation to Westfield Washington Schools. I'll get to that in a minute with regard to open space, which it's not part of. There are these 4 districts. The first district, the lakes here, that's residential, entirely residential here. We've excluded a worship facility or church from that. That was originally, because it's permitted by right, it was allowed. That's been taken out as and identified as prohibited because we didn't have it planned. The only place a school could be on the property would be on this real estate here. This is the fire station that's currently under construction here by the city at the southeast corner of 6 Points and 206. There's the lakes, the village, and the reserve, and the Horton Square mixed-use block. It's located in here. That's about 7 acres in size, and the other 3 areas are predominantly residential. One of the key components to the village is that village is the only area where a townhome would be permitted, and when I get into that slide in a minute, the only areas where townhomes are permitted are generally in this vicinity here, so there's no other location on the real estate where that particular use would be authorized. So this is the lot type map, which is attached as an exhibit. Again, what's happened over the last several weeks and months with review from staff is we've locked down on where these different lot types are located within the real estate. There are 11 different lot types, and they represent 3 alley-fed product types, 7 single-family detached product types, townhomes, and the area here, which is in purple, which would be lots that are custom homes. And if we zoom in for this plan, and this is all going to be all part of the ordinance and attached, substantial compliance is required. This is the lakes area, and we talked about previously these spaces that had linear parks, the lake area itself, the amenities, and we'll get into that in a minute. The next is the village area. This area here that you see with the color, I'll call it pink, is the area where townhomes are authorized. It's the only area in the plan that could have townhomes. So a return back to the Plan Commission with development plan approval would be exclusively in that space for townhomes. And then the reserve is the third area. Of these 3 areas, the predominance of alley-fed product is within the village. There's a little bit in the reserve up here where it faces Horton Road, and you can see the very corner here, a little bit in the lakes where it faces 6 Points and 206 right there. But the vast majority is here within the village. These lots here that are shown in blue, these lots that back up to the transmission line easement, these are front load homes. But on that particular home product type shown in blue and the ones that are adjacent to that power transmission line easement, there are architectural enhancements that will exist on the back of the home that faces those larger common areas, as well as the garage will be set back from the main home area, so that home is the predominant frontage along the street, because across the street you have homes that are alley access. So we're trying to bring and create a little bit tighter knit area that is more walkable and pedestrian friendly in that village space that's part of and adjacent to Hortonville here. These are the 11 different lot types. You can see here, these are the 3 alley types. Type A is the townhome, and type K is the larger minimum 16,000 square foot custom lots. This is an exhibit that's new this evening. I want to say this evening. It's new to the information that was uploaded last week, and it helps to add life to and an explanation of the different townhome or dwelling types throughout. So this is, again, type A is the townhome. This is an example of 3-story townhomes, the front, side, and rear of those townhomes. This is an example of a 4-story townhome, and this is what would be proposed along the Monon. So imagine, if you would, this is the Monon. The landscaping here isn't reflective of that. We're not, the city owns a pretty wide breadth along the Monon, and there's existing landscaping, and none of the landscaping within the Monon corridor is being proposed to be touched by this development, with one exception. If there's a tie-in where we have a path that connects this neighborhood to the Monon, we would cut just the area necessary to get over to the Monon. All the landscaping that exists along the Monon today would be preserved, with the exception of that sidewalk connection. So this might be an individual on the Monon, and these townhomes would be set back probably 40 more feet than illustrated here, but this is intended exclusively for the purpose of illustrating the intended architecture for those townhomes. This is that 4-story product, and it's actually 3 with a rooftop living element, so there'd be living space that sat behind it, but it's a 3-story element from the front, living space, and then, outdoor living space, and then living space beyond it on the back side. This would be the alley that went between the 2 rows of townhomes. This represents the back side of the townhomes that face internally to the site. These are complemented by architectural standards that staff's reviewing to make sure that we have consistency between what we're showing on the screen and what we're providing for your review. The next slide here is the first alley-fed product type, and we were asked to provide side and rear elevations for consideration to, again, bring life to the standards that we're talking about. This would be this is an alley-fed product, the front door. This is the front of the dwelling, an idea of the front of the dwelling. Some of the items that came up with staff review, and I'll identify as we go through these exhibits, because one of the things staff said, well, if you're gonna have window treatment along the front of the house, like you, for instance, see the way that mullion is set, it's 3 at the top and 1 pane at the bottom, and it's got a surround. They want to see that same treatment carried around all 4 sides of the house. So the side of the house and the rear of the house would have that a wrap around the window, and if it has mullions in it, that same mullion treatment would be applied to the side. So you don't see that right now. These are blanks. I say blank, 2 panes, and they would be designed in a manner that would carry across that same type of window type and surround on all 4 sides. Likewise, staff said, we don't have standards yet. We would like to see windows in the garage doors. That's something they feel adds character to the house, and it's something that we've agreed that we'll add, so you'll see that change the next time we produce a red line of those architectural standards. Not finally, but one of the other elements that you don't see here, you don't see masonry along this base. This was an illustration that we pulled together. Masonry is required, all 4 sides, all homes, all different lot types throughout the entire development. So I apologize, we're going to pick this up. We'll either make it by hand, or we'll replace the image with an image that reflects the masonry so that you can get an idea. And that'll be pervasive or applicable across all the slides that we share this evening. The last element you can see in this roof, this is a larger unbroken area on a side elevation. And the city staff said, well, on areas where you're adjacent to a common area or a public street, we'd like to see some additional enhancement to that side elevation. At a minimum, the side that faces that larger common area or a public street. And petitioners agreed to that, so we'll identify extra elements that could be employed on the side elevation of the house in this area, whether that's a change of material, it could be shape that's up there in that spot, not a louver, but a bracket or some element, and we don't want it to be the same across the whole development. We want to give options of 2 or 3 different things to help break up that facade across that product, all those different product types. This is also a alley design product. You can see the imagery here of different products that would be, that type of element right there is something we would introduce to the side elevation, or represented here, we've got horizontal siding rather than vertical. This is a typical rear elevation that faces the alley. As you can see the masonry on all 4 sides. This is an elevation that faces the alley, shows the windows in the garage. This is also a rear elevation and a side that help define the character more of that dwelling type with the masonry on it, as well as window treatments and those different situations there. So the third one, this is a front load product type, type D, and the majority of D is going to be within the lakes. The majority of the alley stuff, 85% is, or 80+% is in the village. This provides that same situation. You've got masonry on all 4 sides. The same type of window treatment you see here would be window treatment applied here, and there's a surround on that window, so there'd be a surround on all the other windows, so it's not just the horizontal siding intersecting the window. This is building type E, again an alley product type, and we've shown a side elevation. This is a side here that's represented. This is a rear elevation that's represented, and again another rear elevation represented here. To again bring life to these standards and the expectation of what the houses may look like in those areas. Building type F is a front load product. You can see again masonry, all 4 sides of the home. Again here, this you might, well, I'll pick it up better in another slide, but the idea is there's nothing in that, and the overhangs are required on all the houses. You don't see that. You see that here, but there's not an element up there in that roof line that helps offset that. So if this is a common area here, that side elevation would be enhanced to illustrate that. Type G, another front load product. This is a typical side elevation, typical side. Again, if this was adjacent to the street or common area, there'd be elements here in the roof line to help add character to that space, or additional windows or something to, again, enhance that side that faces the street and it's more visible. This would be representative of a alleyscape, if you will, or behind the dwellings. Not very much of this exists across the development where they're not back to back, so they'd be behind other areas of the same subdivision. Type H, same conditions apply. Type A, which is getting into the larger product types. Type J, which is the largest non-custom lot type. A lot of side loads you see here, carriage style garages, and then the custom side of things. And again, this just provides representations of different custom homes that we would see as a possibility within that lot type J in the reserve. Examples of the types of treatments you would expect to see on this level of home within that reserve and custom area. That was in the space right here, which is closest in proximity over here to Chatham Hills. This next exhibit is the trail network plan. We spent a lot of time with the Parks Department, Chris McConnell, the Parks Department director, as well as staff. If you recall previously, this is that crisscross area that comes across the site that's got the power line easement. And previously that space called for 2 adjacent trails. And the more Chris McConnell and the staff thought about it, they said, we're not sure that makes sense. People are going to walk where they want to walk, and why don't we just have a wider shared use path? So we're coming up with a cross-section that's going to be a little bit wider than your typical path cross-section. that segment would be a segment that's shared between golf carts and pedestrians. Unlike the Monon, which we're not proposing to have any golf carts on, which is prohibited. But that would be an area, the area is still identified in the dark green line that would be available to golf carts. There was a request by staff to reduce the number of times that crossed the Monon. I think we had 2 or 3 before. We've reduced it down to 1 location, that 1 location being approximately here on the plan rather than multiple locations to try to limit the potential for any conflicts on the plan. And there's other places where you see the perimeter paths. There's still 14 plus miles of perimeter of paths that you see here, both in green and purple. On top of that is sidewalks on both sides of all streets. There's not a situation where we're reducing that requirement. We also had a condition here. This is 214th Street. This path used to extend over here to the property line, and this one owner who sits here, their property comes all the way down to here, up to 214. And they asked, hey, we didn't want to have the path in right at our property line because it tells me if I'm walking. I'm like, okay, so now what do I do? Instead of having to turn back, we wanted to provide a loop. So it loops back into the public street here. It may get extended in the future, but that would be constructed at the time of development for to the east. So we don't leave people in a situation where they're stopped right at an adjacent property without the ability to connect. The one area where that doesn't take place is along, say, for instance, Horton Road or 6 Points. At some point across our frontage, we're going to stop, and it would only get picked up in the future with adjacent development, such like when and if the school were to develop this site with something, they would build the path up to that point, and north would be occurring likely with development on that parcel, unless the city at some point in the future felt like it was high on the priority list of paths that needed to get installed in case there was something going on up here to the north that warranted that additional investment. So we've worked with staff to come up with those areas crossing through the linear parks here and here, limit the areas where there are, that those paths terminate so that we can create loops throughout the site, in particular here around the 11 plus acre amenity area. You see that loop right there is around the lake and the amphitheater and the space there. And that path is going to go right along the edge of the power transmission line area. We took the path out of the middle of I don't say middle, but the edge of the school property and brought along the perimeter so that it doesn't complicate what's occurring in that space, potentially for the school to have to manage. So we brought it along the street frontage. The next exhibit here goes back to amenities. When we come back to you either in February or March with the final amenity plan, our client is updating the character illustrations that we provided you. And as part of that update, we're not taking anything away. We're just providing greater specificity because, again, staff said if we're showing it, which we have it shown in the exhibits, we've got to quantify it and we've got to include it in the ordinance so that we know, staff knows, when it goes to review for development approval, what's proposed there. So these are all the different locations, 11 different primary locations for amenities. This goes back to images that you've seen previously, the linear park spaces here and here, the major amenity here, the 11 plus acre clubhouse, and again, as a reminder, when we presented back in November, 11 and a half acres is twice the size of the park here just down the street, where the in downtown right across from Sun King there. That's about a 5.5 acre parcel that's developed. This is 11. This would be not exclusively for the use and enjoyment of residents in this neighborhood. It's open to the public. Of course, the clubhouse and the pool, that's for use and enjoyment of residents there. But the walking paths, the open spaces, the outdoor spaces, the seating areas, that's all open to the public. Some of the other park spaces within the village, the space here within the custom area. And then this is an exhibit that quantifies what to expect within each one of those 11 primary amenity spaces. And then like I said, there were 9 or 11 additional pages that showed, remember that you could see the exhibits of bird's eye perspectives and other illustrations of what those amenity areas look like. and those are being refined, and we'll include those in our next presentation. This is a thoroughfare plan. I'm sure the Plan Commission is familiar with thoroughfare plans that identifies the width, the cross sections, the expectations with regard to development. And one of the things I thought was unique when we got this completed was there's a lot of different colors in this space here, because that area is different because it's got more of a tight-knit feel and a lot of alley product and things pulled closer to the street. And the other areas, these two areas, the reserve and the lakes, are not as many areas which include the alley-fed product. You can see the multiple colors here. It's got some alley. This is some alley. But the street network in here is not the same type of development you're going to see here in the village. And I'm not going to go through every one of these, but we met a couple weeks ago with Public Works and with staff, and we got to talking about, well, we also need to come up with a cross-section here for Horton Road and a cross-section for 206 Street. And the reason for coming up with that cross-section for Horton Road is as we dive deeper into the design for that mixed-use area, it was clear that we don't need it was a 75-foot or 100-foot half right-of-way in Fort of Horton, because that 100-foot half right-of-way goes on the other side of the church building. If you're familiar, if you've driven out to that intersection where the church building is, you go 100 feet, you're on the west side of the church building. And the expectation is that the buildings within that mixed-use area are going to get pulled up to the street. So that we're working with staff, and that's part of the reason we've delayed presenting that to you. We're working with staff on what does that cross-section look like, and it's likely going to get closer to a 35-foot half. It's going to show on-street parking. It's going to show wider sidewalk, and then you get to the property line. Still going to accommodate buildings with outdoor seating opportunities, but it's not going to be from one end of the room to the other of lawn area, when the expectation is you're pulling a building up to the street, providing a sidewalk that butts up against the building, and cars parked next to it. We want to refine that, make sure we align with everybody's expectations internally before we present that to the Plan Commission.
Hey, John, just one quick second, sorry to interrupt. We received an email from folks who are tuning in, and they were saying that they're having a hard time hearing you because of walking to and from the mic, so just wanted to FYI to make sure to be talking into the mic. Thank you.
In that regard, I'll stay positioned here and talking to the mic. I'll run through these quickly, but this conveys a situation where there's going to be street parking. There's several different street types here, all in an effort to create this space primarily revolving around the village area. This is a narrow travel lane, and even then we've got an alley here. This will be an alley cross-section. What's not represented here clearly, and we'll update the exhibit, there'll be room behind the buildings, so this looks a little closer than it should. There'll be 20 feet minimum to get to the rear yard so that you can park behind the garage. So you'll have 2 in every garage and 2 in every driveway where there's an alley. This next exhibit is of monumentation plan, and I'll go through it quickly. There's a plan for continuing this 4-board fence style along 6 Points Road that's consistent with what's in front of the Osborne Trails today. And then there's a different cross-section here along 206 that would be part of the village where you'd see an internal metal fence. That metal fence is illustrated here. These are wayfinding and monumentation throughout. This is along 206 Street up here. Other examples of monumentation that's going to be out throughout that village area. This is the primary entry into Foundry Park. We're going to position this at the 4 corners so that when the public advances to that space, it provides a sense of arrival into that area. Again, 11 acres, not couple acre park. This is 11 acres. Imagine there being entry style monumentation at the entrance to the park here a couple blocks away at each of those corners along Union Street and Park Street and others. These are much farther apart, 11-acre site. Same style of signage, but different design will be incorporated for the lakes. And then also within the reserve area. This is the board fence and the style that would be identified in these areas. All of this adds to the specificity that leads to what staff told us when we originally filed, we need to nail everything down as tightly as we can so that when we come back, we're delivering exactly what we had conveyed to the stakeholders. Next topic is open space. As a reminder, there's over 150 acres on this 765 acres of open space. It's just over 20%, 150 acres. One of the questions that was asked is, does that open space include the school site? And the answer is no, it doesn't. So we've got 40 acres of school site, 150 acres of additional open space on the property. And modifications and revisions were made to that, in particular along the areas along perimeters, just to dial in with where those spaces are. The next one is with regard to tree preservation. These are the areas where tree preservation is required. Staff had forwarded to us for consideration about an entire page of additional ancillary text of what you can and can't do within a tree preservation area. Our consultants looked at that and they came back and they said, yep, that makes sense. We've imported it into the ordinance, and you'll find that identified within the red line version of the ordinance. Another thing that was done that is kind of an overall issue, and I won't go back to the beginning of the slides, but for the sake of having this laid out here, as we drill down further and you look at the red line, and it's not, the full message isn't conveyed in the red line that's in your packet or available online, because that's a red line between December and now. We start with what we started at Plan Commission public hearing, and now the number of homes has been significantly reduced because we've dialed down, we've done more engineering. Within the lakes, it's gone down from 600 to 575. Within the village, 750 originally, single-family detached homes, down to 620, so a 130 reduction. And the townhomes came down modestly from 250 to 230 as a maximum number, and the reserve from 400 down to 375. But that's all in an effort to continue to add layers of specificity into the ordinance. Tree preservation. The next exhibit. This is an exhibit that the Plan Commission saw a version from previously at our December meeting. This exhibit, we forwarded it out to, I think, 6 or 8 additional contacts. So if somebody emailed me with comments about this particular area, which is adjacent to Monon Corner, or the Shirley's residents, and I know the Shirleys are here tonight, and they've communicated to you their additional thoughts. We sent it also back out to them, so we didn't just work under the expectation that they're going to go find it on the agenda. We sent it out to them. Some have communicated to you in writing prior to tonight. That's included in the last 7 or 8 public comments. And one person communicated back to us and they said, hey, I'm going to wait until after tonight's meeting, after I hear what other people have to say before I'll share additional thoughts, which is fine. I just wanted to call that to everybody's attention. The space here is about 6 acres, and that 6 acres is occupied by predominantly a wooded area. The plan that we had presented to the Plan Commission back in December called for there to be a cul-de-sac extending here south. Originally, the residents, and still today, the residents which surround are asking for us to preserve 100% of that wooded area. And we feel, and our client feels, the applicant feels, that they've done a considerable job. More than 97% of the wooded area is preserved under this plan. In that it may be relevant for consideration by all stakeholders, this represents about a $350,000 investment, not developing in this area. That's ground. And it also represents about $7 to $8 million of assessed value of lots and homes that wouldn't be constructed on that real estate. So that's foregone continued revenue. That's foregone ground to be developed. That's just an observation where I'm not trying to make our case based on the loss of $8 million in revenue or the ground value. We want to get input from all the stakeholders. We've gotten input from the public. We want to get the Plan Commission's input this evening, and we want to continue that with getting input from council members before we're back in front of the Plan Commission for final consideration on advancing this forward. The Shirley's property is located here, and along their south perimeter, not on their property, but on Monon Corner's property, there's about a 50-foot wide area that provides landscaping, and that landscaping includes 6 to 7 foot black spruce trees, 2-inch caliper maple trees, mound, and in that space. And we would propose to replicate that number of plantings, which exists from their back property line up to Horton Road, in this area here. So if the number of shade trees that exist, the number of evergreen trees that exist, we'll do a count. There is a time which we'll prepare a finalized landscape plan, and that would be with development plan review and approval by the Plan Commission in subsequent months later this year in the event that the council adopts the ordinance. It wouldn't be prepared at this time, but we can drill down on an expected number of plants within that based on looking at the aerial and doing a count of what are the evergreen trees, what are the shade trees, but the commitment is to match the number of plantings and the specificity that's identified or provided along the south side in that space along the north perimeter of the site. One of the things that wasn't previously identified was a drainage easement between the pond here and a beehive inlet that exists right here. We have to get to that point with our drainage. There's a 35 acre watershed that currently drains to that overland today. The plan for this, as we were developing it, was to come straight south with our easement. And rather, because when you zoom into the aerial, you can see that it's pretty sparse through here. It's sparse along the south property edge of trees. So we've located the easement in this area so as to avoid existing trees. We believe we can snake it through there and get to the beehive without the removal of trees in that space. I'd like to move on to this next slide to show you a little bit more, because I think potentially that when people see this, you can see a little bit darker area along here, and this is a little bit more green and lighter. If we zoom in, this is a zoom in, so again, like right here, we zoom in, this is a shadow of the trees. This is a function of the aerial photography that was taken at the time. And the tree line is right along this area, so we're promoting tree preservation. One might ask, why is there a hook behind the lots? There's a hook behind the lots because we're required to collect stormwater off the lots and transmit it. So there'll be a modest swale that collects stormwater off the backside of these lots and transmit it into, maybe there'll be a beehive right here. That water then goes into the pond. As I indicated, this area represents less than 3% of the area of the woods. And part of the reason behind that is that we've got a connection point here that we have to match. The substreet that is within the development here. About the first lot that you find within Monon Corner is about right here. The reason it's not identified is that this is their 50-foot common area here and a secondary row of landscaping that was provided along their development, because today, and at the time they were developed, this is AGSF1. And a buffer is required between AGSF1 and subdivisions. Where subdivisions are adjacent to one another, there's no requirement in the UDO for a buffer. However, we're in an attempt for us to listen to and coordinate with the Plan Commission on what would be appropriate here. The proposal is now for a 75-foot setback that would include tree preservation and a 75-foot space here. It's not included all the way up to the north because we start to flare out here with the lots, and there's a wider common area here. Again, UDO, subdivision next to subdivision, is 0. The effort here is regarding tree preservation. The Plan Commission made it clear at your last meeting, do more to preserve the trees. And we've done as much as the applicant feels is appropriate in this space to preserve trees, 97+% worth in that area. But we're looking for the Plan Commission's feedback, we'll look for the council's feedback, and before we come back to the Plan Commission for final adoption consideration, or rather a recommendation, we'll have consensus on that matter. This is the buffer adjacent to one of the other properties that we met with the owner here. He asked us, can we push the pond back a little? We agreed, minimum 100 foot. And we've identified within that area, there's 75 foot. Can we add some trees right here in this corner? We agreed, we'll add some trees here in that corner. The rest of the space is 40 feet along the perimeter. We had originally, in the original ordinance, proposed 20 foot. One might ask, why would you propose 20 foot when the UDO calls for 40? And it's because the 20 feet is the same dimension that's been applicable to the adjacent development. Most applicable would be Chatham Hill, so Chatham has a required 20-foot buffer area adjacent to the development. We thought that must have been considered. We've changed it, and we're proposing 40, which is consistent with the ordinance, consistent with the number of plantings required within the buffer, but wider here. We met in the dining room or living room with a gentleman, family who lives here, and they were able to show us what their concerns were and address them to their satisfaction. Likewise, the owner here, we met with that owner, and they had indicated, hey, we've got a few trees along here. We've got a plan to put a pool in our side yard there behind the house. Can we get consideration of a fence and additional plantings on either side of the fence? And again, here the note about terminating the path so you don't have people walking right up to the property line. And this is the accommodation we came into consideration of for that owner right here. And they're both good folks. Everybody has been good to work with. This is the red line of the ordinance. Again, if you look at that red line, it's not the whole thing. I'll submit to staff for our next meeting a red line that takes us from public hearing to current, which will be the next meeting. I think that's a lot more telling because the red line you have just shows we made a bunch of changes to December, and then we made a fair number, but not as many, between December and today. That's everything that I have to present for your consideration tonight. I'm sure that you may have comments and questions. We want to spend time on that as much as you need.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the level of detail. I think it's going to create robust discussion. So, with that, which commissioner would like to go first? No comments? I'm sure there are some. Councilor McCarty.
I want to preface, I'm not trying to talk a lot tonight because I talked a lot last time, and everyone knows where I still stand on this project. But just a couple of the notes that I was writing down during the presentation. Since kind of working backwards in the tree preservation discussion, as well as the I would say still 3 remaining lots there next to Monon Corner. I'll just echo all of the emails as well as the Shirleys in the audience that we have received, that I'm pretty sure when all of the correspondence says all the trees, they mean all the trees. I do appreciate all the work that has gone into it thus far, but I'll just leave it at that many, if not all of the residents, not just here in this particular section with the remaining obstructing lots there, but also in the reserve section where ponds and homes would be taking out trees. I believe I said something similar in the last meeting, that this project is so vast and large that there's plenty of open space to be able to construct ponds and homes without taking down trees. But that's that topic. Kind of being a little bit more sporadic. When talking about the open spaces for, I think it's a given with the open spaces, but mainly in discussion regarding the parks, are all of these park spaces that are open to the public, not just these residents, are they maintained by the master HOA association that will be governing here? Just want to make sure I have some clarification on whether it's the HOA or it's our Parks Department that is paying for any upkeep there. Just looking through my notes. I do appreciate a positive. I do appreciate all of the masonry requirements for all 4 sides. Would still like to see some improvements with the examples that were given, but I do think that's a step in the right direction for all 4-side masonry. And going back, sorry, on the topic of tree preservation, reading through the red or blue blind ordinance, I do appreciate all the additional measures instituted for defining tree preservation. Again, going back on the west side, though, the lakes, since we haven't really talked about that too much, there's a pond that cuts into that grove of trees there. So just wanted to highlight that section. That's the reserve. So kind of both sides. Yeah, so we have all the way on the west side where, yes, there is that green, but the pond cuts into it. So I just want clarification of how much that cuts into. And then again, all the way on we've been talking about the middle a lot, so all the way on the east side in the reserve, the custom lots, the ponds cutting into the trees, the homes cutting into the trees, so forth. The golf cart path connecting to the Monon, I hesitate to keep going back to that discussion, but just basing off of all of the correspondence from the Chatham residents, as well as many of the folks that live up here, it seems like any connection of vehicular traffic connecting to the Monon for that possibility is not a good thing. I know there's, which it's hard to control this, but many kids on dirt bikes, e-bikes, so on and so forth, riding up and down here in the Monon. So that's something that I worry about as well, that you have a crossing path with golf carts, and what kind of preventive measures will be instituted to make it clear to those potential drivers of the golf carts, hey, you cannot go down this path or that path, so on and so forth. This may or may not be where I stand alone up here. I know my fellow counselors have similar thoughts, though. For the townhomes and the apartments, that's a hotbed topic right now, and just me personally, I do not see this being the correct area for townhomes, let alone apartments. There's still within the ordinance the minimum for builders being 5% and the maximum being 60%. And I did read, it was noted that the homes facing 214th Street, they would have to now face, the frontage would have to face 214th Street. But we did receive correspondence from a neighbor that lives up there, a very, very detailed letter, multi-pages of just his thoughts and so forth. And I do agree with him that, well, the precedent is already up there of having these larger estate lots, so just kind of mimicking that instead of, again, the higher density. I apologize for my thoughts being everywhere, but just trying to jot down notes, and I'll just open it up for discussion for others.
All the amenity areas are maintained in perpetuity by the HOA.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions from commissioners? Mr. Buckfist.
Yeah, I'll take the leap. Bear with me, John. So in 71A1E, where you're talking about rear facade adjacent to existing power transmission line easements having some level of like rear elevation feature, is that also your anticipation? And maybe I missed it, for where you also have some level of trail backing as well? Or is it solely the transmission line that'll have the boosted feature?
That particular standard is applicable to the lots that would be along the power transmission line easement.
Okay. Looking at, let me pull it up here. Looking at the overall trail network, is there an opportunity to expand on that requirement with some of the requirements as you face what I'll call the more heavily trafficked trail systems, right? So you have the trail system that runs through the power transmission. You do have multiple connectors, one of which runs through the heart of some development to the Monon. Just looking at that prior to the next, before the next workshop on what those elevations may look like.
So
Sticking, go ahead.
if you would,
Mm-hmm.
so the answer is yes. We'll take a look at that, and looking at this trail plan, if after you return to your day job tomorrow, if you can take that exhibit and mark it up and send it to staff and us,
Absolutely.
and then we'll know specifically where you would want to see that consideration provided.
Absolutely. Sticking on rear yard elevation, to confirm, you said all home types will have some level of mason ribbon or concrete ribbon, brick ribbon, whatever you called it.
Wainscot.
Yeah, including, I think it was G, did not show anything but G, everything,
And
right?
those-
Okay.
So every house, every district, every plan, 100% masonry on all four sides. Hasn't been done before. We're proposing it. As far as I know, hasn't been done before. On
Aberdeen.
PUD, Westfield.
Aberdeen across the street.
Aberdeen is a standard that they employed by choice.
Mhm.
It's part of Chatham Hills.
So the
It's
Chatham
owned as-
PUD,
It's owned as
right.
part of it,
Yeah,
and Chatham doesn't have that standard in place.
understood. Let me see here. Sorry, much like Victor, a little sporadic. As part of the 71A3B, the 30% of front-loaded garages having that recessed feel, have you identified what garages where? Is that kind of developer, builder discretion?
Give me a second to get to that.
71A3B, or yeah, 3B, where you're talking about the recessed front-loaded garages.
I'm there. What was the question?
Let me get to my own number here so I can get to it. John, did you write this yourself? Do you have any like skin left on your fingers? So it was 71A3B. At least 30% of front-loaded homes on lots including street access shall include garage that is recessed from the main living area by a minimum of 10 feet. Is that something that's identified before building? Is that something that kind of just goes with the flow? I guess if we're again talking about like the anti-monotony plans, right? And maybe I'm misunderstanding the intent here, but have you identified
Yes.
which ones are recessed where?
It's predominantly B in the village
Okay.
here, where, again, 80% are alley fed. This is the area where we're not doing an alley fed because we're not putting the alley up against the
Mm-hmm.
transmission. So
Yep.
these are those homes that we're talking about in
Okay.
that space.
Perfect. What else did I have here? So on some of the rear elevations, I think specifically I had noted the Type A townhomes. There are, and if you don't mind going to your lot, the lot overview, the very, very colorful drawing, and zooming in on really A along the Monon. That's fine. Well, yeah, that's fine. There is, I'm looking at the bottom right rear elevation. It, to me, with some of the siding that's shown, it doesn't represent really what you're showing elsewhere. And there are a few key areas where it appears 5, 6, 7 townhomes have exposure to the Monon. There's like a gap between, your frontage and the row behind such.
In somewhere in this vicinity.
Yep. So I mean, right where your laser is there.
Yeah,
If you
I
go
see
a
what
little
you're talking
more
about.
and a little more.
So
So but prior to the
You're gonna
next.
have visibility from the Monon here to what may be
Correct.
the back of buildings.
Correct. So just maybe increasing the standard there for exposed rear elevations. Let me see here. Do I get to reserve the right to come back? Looking as well, I know my understanding of Type K is we're looking at custom to semi-custom there, I believe, correct?
Custom exclusively.
I'm sorry?
Custom exclusively.
Custom exclusively. So in terms of rear elevations not being shown, I mean, it's going to be fitting of the product type, I imagine, correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
all these here.
To the direct south, we had talked about, or I had mentioned how I didn't like that, but go a little north to the residential unit closest to the road there. Forgive me for not knowing, is that yellow tan color of roadway what we're anticipating the expanded roadway size to be?
That's the expanded right-of-way that we're required to dedicate. That's
Okay.
why we're having that continued discussion.
Okay.
Is that wide a right-of-way through that space what we want to see?
Yeah.
Because it's not consistent with what you feel if you drive through the other portion where Hortonville is.
Right. No, that makes sense. And my question for you then, John, is I'm seeing one rear yard setback, one side yard setback. And so are we saying that one, what I'll call page west for the south Type K? So the little standalone right there, if you can picture it, right down, sorry. Yep, that one right there. Are we saying that would be held to a side yard standard on the setback, or would that be considered front
So
yard
that's an
team?
anomaly, and you pointed it out.
Yeah.
There'll be a street frontage transition buffer provided
Okay.
between that first lot and the roadway.
So it's fair to assume we're not going to see a 6-foot setback from right away to the side of that house.
Good question. It would be 206th Street pavement, about a 15-foot setback path,
Mm-hmm.
at least another 30 feet before you get to that lot, and within that intervening 30 feet, there would be mounding and landscaping consistent with the UDO.
Okay. And then, still not a fan of the Type C to the south, but I've been told to trust the process on how that ties into the remaining property around it. Final point in question for me is if I am looking at the type, I'm going back a little to the west here, John, where you kind of have the blue U to the far west of the page, and we're looking at what I believe to be the Type Bs.
Right here?
Yep. I'm still really there and even to the east of it, I'd say, because we're obviously looking at the green Type Cs is what I'm looking at, John, along the roadway on both sides. Yep, there and over there. Those are all alley loaded based off of what I am seeing.
Yes.
That feels like a really, really hard transition point. So I think the one is really covered on the east because there's that buffer that you've put in, right?
And the hard transition, are you like right here?
Yeah, like where you have roadway cut, just kind of stop, and you have those kind of 3-4 standalones with no comp there. So again, that is more of an ambiguous statement of, is there a way to get a little more creative on buffering around those units? Other than that, I concede.
I appreciate it, and if, again, just as a reminder, if you can get that.
Yeah,
to
I'll mark
staff
it up.
And we'll work through it.
Yep, thank you.
Further comments from commissioners? Dr. Keynes?
First of all, John, I want to thank you, Platinum Properties, and the staff for all the hours I know that you've put in doing this, because there's about 3 of these that can probably be developed in the northwest quadrant at some point in time. So it's really important for us to get it right the first time. So I know you got a lot of work ahead of you, but thank you all for the work that's been done
Yes, sir.
up to this point in time. I ask about the school site. You're just absolutely donating that to the school, whether they need it or not.
Well, the need has been expressed, and we've responded to the expression and the willingness for them to take on that real estate. There was one comment made by, I think, one of the council members suggested, if the school doesn't use it within a certain amount of time, can the city use it? And we're working through a response to how and if that might be done.
Okay.
But as it has been with other larger developments, Westgate was another one where the school's currently under construction along Town Road, and Countryside and others. We're trying to make a responsible contribution to an opportunity. We're not telling, and as I said at the public hearing, I'm not telling you there's going to be a school there. I'm just saying it's opened itself up for an opportunity. The school has in the past purchased real estate from other developers within those developments. This is a dedication of that space without there is no payment from the school to us to obtain that real estate. It's a contribution, a dedication to the school.
So I wanted to clarify that, and I wish you'd been around 15 years ago. But,
I might not have been able to say it then.
well, since we bought Oak Trace from Platinum Properties, that ground, no, you
Yeah.
couldn't have done that.
And
but
again,
anyway.
that was all part of the discussion at the time, and everybody was in agreement, and different times.
Well, the only comment I will make further on that is both Carmel and Southeastern are experiencing declines in their enrollment at the lower grade levels because they're built out, and you have maturing neighborhoods where there's not as many kids going to schools like in your subdivision. So I just want to make sure there's a plan in case, I mean, this is a 10-year build-out, in case that there's not a need for the school, there's something that property has some place to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the, just as an observation, the council and the school board met a couple of weeks back, and there was a presentation by the demographer, and a lot of that same information was shared about the transition and the aging in place, and not seeing the backfill on I call it backfill. It's people selling their houses as I get my age with kids out of the school. and others. So it's very, very interesting that the order of magnitude of that impact on the schools of families not moving and being replaced with younger families has a very large impact on our school enrollment. So just sharing that. If you have an opportunity, if it's not, maybe staff can share with everybody via an email a link to that. It's very informative discussion.
Just one follow-up question, the townhomes, 4-story townhomes along the Monon, will that not shade the Monon almost entirely the whole time during the summer?
I have not been across that segment in a while, but today the tree line that exists on both sides of the Monon is only a few feet away from the Monon itself, and then you've got another 20 feet of area that has trees in it. I can put something together. We can put something together real quick to show you what the implication might be about the setback. But rest assured, the photos that I shown, I apologize because this is not representative of what somebody walking along the Monon is going to experience. This is from another project where they had put together these illustrations that share this idea of that height. The Monon's going to be over here, and there's going to be tall trees in between it and the front of these dwellings. There'll be a setback. There'll be an intervening sidewalk. So these folks, when they walk out their front door, they'll walk to a sidewalk. That sidewalk will go 1,000 feet in one direction, 500 feet in the other, to the connection that gets over to the Monon that runs parallel, but you're not walking through the thicket over here to get onto the Monon. You might want to venture yourself and get over there, but the idea is there's a townhome, a sidewalk, an intervening parallel walk, and a connection over to the Monon, which is further removed. So I can get you a couple examples of where a taller dwelling like that exists in proximity. The ones, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, the townhomes they're 4 stories, they're in Carmel, they're near Carmel City Hall and the fire station, and they're 4 stories. There are 3 like this, and they have an outdoor living space on the 4th story with a living space behind it. Those are like 12 feet away from the Monon. We're talking about 30 plus feet away from the Monon. It's not on top of it like this represents.
Thank you.
Mr. Horkay.
The townhomes you refer to in Carmel, I actually got through one of those long ago when they were first being built. They're really spectacular. They'll sell quickly, I'm sure, and to your point, they really are close to the Monon, and I can understand what you're describing here, that they're going to be well back. But in looking at the aerials that we have in the GIS, and I actually spent 45 minutes probably today driving all around Hortonville to get fresh eyes on all those conditions. It's January, so deciduous trees are kind of uninteresting to look at and easy to look through. But it does seem like there's a lot of growth along the trail that would shade it naturally anyway. So I don't think that this is going to be that much of an impact, and they're only on one side of the trail. So from the morning sun, not going to be an issue. I'm looking forward to hearing the resolution on the builders, how many and what they're.
Can I update you on that?
Sure, if you want to jump in right now, if there's an update, that's one of the
Currently,
things I'm most curious about.
As originally proposed, every builder was 5%, and there would be a minimum of 5, so you could have 80% of the homes could be built by one builder, and that's not the intent, not the expectation. The way it's written today is for our review from the last meeting, it was 60%, and we're still working on that, and I think what you'll see when we come back is a reduction, and for us to address it by district, meaning the reserve, the lakes, and the village, and we'll go through that. So yes, it's in process. Yes, we're having that dialogue. Couldn't share it tonight because we're not through that discussion, but we'll address it at the February committee or workshop. I keep calling it committee.
Okay, and I wasn't expecting that you had an answer, but I just wanted to reinforce that that was a problematic standard.
Wanted everybody to know that we haven't dropped it. We're still working through it.
Okay. I really don't have too much else to ask. I think Platinum has gone well above and beyond what I would have as far as a baseline standard for trees. I have a very unpopular view of them, and I hope I don't get anybody roughing me up tonight.
You have
but
a lot of trees on your yard.
I do, and I'm cutting some of them down, and there were only 2 when I moved there. So, I mean, it is a crop. They will grow.
Some of them grow kind of slow, so I get that and why people are very anxious to keep them. I probably would have been very satisfied if the latest proposal for that tree cluster wasn't what it is today. Anybody that feels that's just still not satisfied, I can't have a lot of sympathy for being that demanding.
Can we expand on that? I'm not asking for a straw poll. I'm just asking for everybody to, if there's others on the plan commission that want to share comments on that, Victor did, Mr. Jorge did, can you share those with us now so that we have some a clear expectation from the plan commission at least on what we might see at a next meeting, so that I can go back to our client and say, here's what we heard from the plan commission, we know what we're hearing from the public, and I'm going to solicit input from the other council members so that I know where everybody stands, so that we come back with something that is somewhere in the middle of meeting everybody's expectations.
And everybody that hasn't spoken is probably going to be somewhere in the middle between Victor and myself.
You guys
we're on opposite
you
ends
guys
of
bookends. Yeah.
And I just want to, the Shirleys are here, and there's a couple other things that they asked for, and one was consideration of only doing single-story homes in this vicinity. I don't know whether it's the entire space or that. Any feedback from the plan commission on an expectation for that to be only single-story houses rather than 1- and 2-story homes, which are consistent with, we're not asking for any increase in height to the UDO. Again, I want to get your feedback. That I'm not telling the neighbor that they need to feel differently. What does the plan commission think about what's been communicated to you regarding that? So I can convey to our client, should we expect that to be a pressing issue for other stakeholders?
I don't recall hearing about that request for 1-story homes. Maybe I blinked during a meeting and didn't catch that.
It was in a letter that was sent
Oh, all right.
previously.
I would think that those houses are far enough away that the entirety of that area certainly shouldn't need to be limited to a single story, but maybe the end of that street might be a consideration, but I'd be open to. There's some really nice looking 2-story homes. I live in one myself, I think, and it doesn't meet today's ordinances because I don't have enough windows and breaks, but I planted trees, as was just referenced here.
And I would echo that sentiment of if we're talking about these master plans being anti-monotony, I don't want to start out with a block of just all ranch, right? And so to Mr. Jorge's point, maybe if you have your end caps as ranches, but then you start to get in the diversity from there, that'd be a good middle ground.
Okay.
That's what I was going to echo, just working in a vacuum here in terms of just overall planning, have a transition to other housing types. You can have the single, this first floor with a loft. I've lived in one of those, so you can have some sort of variety there.
Okay. I appreciate that.
For further context, I mean, just immediately north, if I'm not mistaken, this is getting into the village, mixed use area, right, too, so which is going to have some higher heights to it. So to that point, I think we do want to probably just naturally see a transition upward in height. Just again, as just a general planning principle.
So we'll take a look at considering something, the first house in or something like that to stair step up.
Related to your original question on tree preservation, since it was on my list, these guys have systematically taken things off my list, so towards the end I may not have anything to say. But I think when you say that you've preserved 97%, a group wants 100. You guys originally said you were going to have far less. I don't know what the original percentage would have been that you would have taken out, but I feel like you guys have gone above and beyond in that aspect. Nothing is ever perfect. The art of compromise is that not everyone gets 100%, otherwise it would be compromise. I am very satisfied from my perspective on the tree preservation that you've provided, minus whatever continuing conversations you have with residents around this area or any tree preservation area that you can obviously continue to have, and I would be supportive if you gave them a little bit more. That's perfectly fine. But since you're kind of not taking a straw poll, but kind of I agree with Mr. Jorge. I mean, I'm not for cutting down trees needlessly ever, unless we just have to. But I think that you guys have been met more than halfway, at least in front of what I'm seeing here today. that is satisfactory to me. So
I
I'll
appreciate
give you my direct. Now, there are other commissioners with all their hands on the buttons down there, so I'm going to let them say something the same or different. But I'm going to start with Mr. Mooney hasn't said anything tonight, so he's going to get to go first.
I mean, I'm kind of out of innovative ideas at this point, but what do I pay attention to on tree preservation? The amount of emails I get, I read them all, I take it serious. Mike, I kind of like your idea. I mean, I assume there's going to be continuing conversations to be had. I'll monitor it. Do I think we're in the right direction? Yeah. I mean, I work in finance, 97%. Yeah, and I do understand the monetary side of it. I do. Those are real numbers, so I do respect that. I appreciate the process. My one question is, well, first of all, I appreciate the example of the 4-story townhomes. That was one of my questions. Where can I see it? So I'll go check that out in Carmel and check that box. The large shared path, that concept going from kind of the parallel paths to the shared path, I think I like it. Is there an example anywhere?
I'll provide an example, and we'll provide a cross-section that'll be attached to the ordinance.
Because everything I looked up was like Georgia and...
It's wide. It don't, I shouldn't say that. It's in my view, that shared path, it was like we were talking about a 14 or 16-foot cross-section, and that's wider than the Monon cross-section, which is typically 12, some of the Midlands 10. So 16 feet. Why is it wide? Because there's a area where here it's like, if you're smart, walk on the area that doesn't say golf cart. If you want to risk walking in that same space because you have free will, walk in that space.
Yeah.
But 16 feet is what Chris conveyed to us was an appropriate cross-section to use for that trail. I'll ask him or our consultant if we can give you an example of where and get some pictures.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And we'll create a cross-section that'll be attached to the ordinance.
It's an interesting concept. You're not going to win everybody over, right? Especially with a crossing point on the Monon. I just think this is a great opportunity to get it right.
Understood.
We're not
And
going to
that's why we
satisfy
brought in-
everybody once again on this.
That's why we engaged Chris McConnell in that discussion, and he said, we don't need more, we need less conflict points, just like streets.
Yeah.
So we reduced the crossing down to 1 crossing rather than 3 situations, and come up with that combined path because he felt that was a superior alternative to 2, 1 next to each other.
I appreciate that. I will say, I do appreciate the process. I think to hear that you sit down with homeowners when you can, I do appreciate that. I take that serious. We got a lot of feedback about process, especially the amount of home sites that are impacted around this. And it does give some reassurance the way that you guys are going about it. So I do appreciate that.
Understood.
Mrs. Carlson, and then I'll come back to Dr. Keene.
Now, I think it's been quite obvious that you're paying attention to what the homeowners are saying and the residents in the surrounding area. And I do love the tree preservation area, number one, for privacy, because they want to maintain that privacy that they've had since the time they've lived there, whichever homeowner it is. And you're also protecting the species that are there, like the bats and the squirrels and things like that. So I love the idea of tree preservation, and the fact that you're saving as many as possible is great. On the note of the having ranches for the first few in, I totally understand that, and I think it adds to the diversity of the housing. So I don't think it's a problem at all to start with a few ranches and then work your way up, like some of the others mentioned. The other thing I have to say is the more I look at this, the more I've been up there a couple times to Horton. I kind of go to a church up there occasionally, and I think once the residents get used to it, it's going to be a tremendous asset. The parks are amazing. I think the walkways, the trails. If I had my 4 young kids, this is a place I'd want to live. There's a lot of amenities and a lot to do. And as long as the neighbors are taken care of, then I think this is a great project.
Dr. Keene.
John, single-family homes only, no. You need the variance. As far as the landscaping goes, 97% is awfully good, and you've added a lot of additional plantings around the edges that other homeowners request. So in the net result is you probably have more than what is being lost to some degree. I would also thank Platinum for reducing the number of homes. I forgot to do that earlier. Both those home sections having that reduction obviously adds to more spaciousness for the people who are going to move in there in the future.
Counselor McCarty.
Just on, going back to this topic specifically, talk about practicality for a second. With having, I appreciate you addressed that sliver earlier. When I think of if these 3 lots have to happen, what I think about,
Which 3?
oh, sorry, from where the arrow's pointing, 75, and then those
This
3.
is outside.
Yes,
see that?
so those 2 lots.
We're outside this lot's out, it's these 2 that we're talking about.
Yeah. So for those 2 lots, first I think about that sliver behind there. Is that going to be HOA maintained, or is their property going to extend towards the trees?
Everything that's on the lot is a owner's responsibility. In this area, it's common area that's maintained by the HOA.
So,
But it's also within a drainage easement.
yeah,
So what you would expect to see in that space that runs along the property line would be the bottom of a swale. And when I say swale, I'm talking about at this corner, it's 0. And as it gets closer to where a beehive is, it gets deeper. So we're talking about when you look out your back door, you don't see any difference over there in that corner. But you know that's where the water's going because it's got a gradual back to this location and then runs across the back of that lot and probably picks up in a beehive here at the back of that corner before it gets in the lake.
yeah, for sure. I'm just picturing what I see walking in my neighborhood with, even though it's not really common area, but it's common area for the purposes of who maintains it. That again, if those 2 lots have to happen, finding some way just to extend it as much as possible so there's no future confusion between maintenance and, hey, maybe you're even able to sell those lots at a premium because then you have mature trees on the lot.
We have internally been discussing that to mitigate it as much as possible. So, appreciate it.
Mr. Bunkfist.
John, sorry if I missed this in the ordinance, but it mentioned 75 landscape buffer to match Monon Corner buffer mound. Height and plantings to the south. I don't have that PUD in front of me, but if I remember correctly, the demising buffer between Monon Corner and the home to the north is a skosh taller than the buffer along Horton.
It's along these lots. You can see these lots are lots in Monon Corner.
Yep.
That space, which includes their trail and the mound and the plantings, is 50 feet in wide. It gets wider. You can see these little dots here.
Right.
That's the path, and then it comes up parallel to Horton.
Yep.
There's a few more trees in that little spot, but
Right.
where the mound is, it's right along the edge of their property. The mound is, and we'll pick up stormwater and do all that.
Okay.
But that's
So
where the mound
that's
is.
the question, though. You are matching that mounding.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mound height, number of plantings, the variety of plantings, that's what we're in agreement with.
Perfect.
Or when I say we're in agreement with something, we're agreeing to do that. Somebody
Right.
asked that question later and said we don't have an agreement, and I didn't mean to infer that there was an agreement. We were in agreement to do that as a matter of the ordinance.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Horke.
2 comments, just briefly going back to things that we've talked about and moved on from. Thought of another location where if anybody's typically driving south on Spring Mill, approaching 116th Street at Jackson's Grant, which is a spectacular neighborhood. If I could afford it, I'd live there and leave Westfield. But there are, and I can't afford it, so there's no way. There's no way. But there are some similar 4-story townhomes that have roof, outdoor enjoyment space. So those are easier to see, but it's worth going to either of them. It also occurred to me on the subject of the Monon crossings that about the same place where you show on the path plan where there's a Monon crossing, that there is, albeit little used, but there is a crossing right there for the substation that's there. There is a road that comes off of.
What Mr. Horke is referring to is this is the PSI substation.
Yeah.
And their driveway is basically that green line or right next to it. They have a gravel driveway that extends across the Monon and intersects Horton Road right there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm referring to, yeah. Little used, I'm sure, but it's placing that crossing at a place where crossings already occur on some frequency.
Further comments?
since we're opening it back up to broad comments, and again, because the Shirleys are in the audience, something I did want to go back to that I greatly appreciated in one of the correspondence from them, there were these mock-up images of character for downtown Hortonville. I know this is kind of outside of the scope a little bit, but when we're talking about the central node to this, and again, the character in general for the project, I don't know if you've seen them or not. I know they were sent to staff, but I really loved the character that was shown here. And I know Jackson Grant was mentioned. It is very contrary to something like Jackson's Grant. It's very small town, USA Main Street, and I just love the rendering of it.
Victor, is that an email transmittal from the Shirleys to staff?
Yes, yeah, it was to staff and us.
Yeah, we uploaded that today.
Okay.
I'll get it to you.
Okay, so I haven't seen it.
Okay, yeah, I just
And
wanted
just
to.
you're speaking of their comments about Hortonville in general.
Yes, yeah. Again, I just wanted to reference this since, again, they were in the audience, and we're starting to talk about architecture a little bit here and there. And I just thought it was wonderful, so, thank you.
All right, I'm going to make two comments because that's all I have left on my list after most of them got poached. First, can you go, after you're done making your note there, to the townhome character exhibits where you showed the 3- and 4-story? This is just a small note to, on the 4-story. I don't mind the concept of a 4-story. I think that's great. I don't know if I'd want 4 stories where I live, but I'm sure people do. But the character itself, and maybe just because this came from another project versus the 3-story, they just look, to me, just incredibly different. And maybe, obviously, you want everything in this section essentially the same, but maybe some thought to, is there any opportunity to tie some things back in with the 4-story to the 3-story, which look a little, I don't know, stately is not the word, but say that again? Yeah.
The style and design elements?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, if there's an opportunity to do that. And like I said, I know you said this is from a different project, so maybe that's not exactly what you're intending.
Because they're adjacent to one another, and they're all in that same vicinity.
Yeah.
So we'll look at directing the architect to put something together that speaks to what design elements can be worked through both, so that they look like not identical, but
Right.
that they play nice together.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. And the last piece, if you can go, I think it's in the reserve, it's that south piece that Mr. Bunkefus talked about earlier, that's just east, yeah, that little yellow section down there. I think my only comment related to that is I agree in general that it, obviously, I think I had said that at our first meeting, that it obviously looks like kind of an outlier. I think the piece we're missing, and we know that this will come down the line, is that I wonder how that will interact with the Hortonville proper development. And maybe it will make more sense when that exists.
Well, so along with the mixed-use area, this little pocket, we'll coordinate with staff on what their thought process is about that street that exists behind here, and how and if that talks and walks like the same design for Hortonville.
Yeah, that's my only comment on that. Is I had mentioned that before. It seems like an island, but in the greater context, maybe it won't be once we see whatever that looks like. That is all I have. Are there any final comments or questions from commissioners before we let Kevin tell us what we think we said? Seeing and hearing none. Godspeed. Okay.
Would it behoove you, Kevin, maybe just to send this to us via email and let you know
You don't
if
have to,
maybe
yeah.
we were misheard on some things?
We can do that. Suggestion was that I can just send these via email. Happy to do that. Yeah, if that would be better. I generally like to leave these meetings, though, with some idea of what we're aiming for resolution on. So I'll take a crack at it here. And this is a combination of things that I heard John mention in his presentation, that they were going to provide updates. I had a couple of those, just so they didn't get lost in the discussion, as well as things that the commission talked about, really kind of in order of appearance here. So first one was updated amenity character images that John talked about. Working with staff on a revised cross-section for Horton Road at 206th Street. Update to street section H. I missed the detail of that, but we have the recording. So those are the things that the petitioner mentioned. Things from the Plan Commission. This was received a lot of discussion since I made this note, but the buffer yard that we're talking about, tree preservation, 97% versus 100%. Initial comment was to get that to 100%, not 97. I'm not sure if we landed at any sort of consensus tonight on that or not, but that's a note for additional, probably follow-up at the next meeting. There was a comment about the ponds in the reserve area. Victor, I think this was your comment. Was it specifically just the reserve area that ponds are cutting into tree areas there, or was it both the reserve and the lakes?
Yeah, both east and west, just where the ponds are located, cutting into the tree area.
Okay. Golf cart path. And is this the same? I don't know. Is this the same as the 14 to 16 foot shared path that we talked about later? Okay. So there's one comment. Let's see. If there's the place where there is a connection point to the Monon needs to have some sort of, we need to address somehow so golf carts do not enter the Monon. Is that the comment? I don't know if that's through signage or through some other sort of
waypoint finding clarity. I think that's a good way to put it.
So perhaps a sign plan or something for that. Let's see. General comment that townhomes and apartments are not in the right location. Is that just generally across the board for this whole project? Okay. That was a thumbs up for those that didn't see that. General discussion about the builder ratios, which I think later was visited by John, that they're still working through refining the ratio numbers. So we'll hear an update on that. This one I was a little missed on homes facing 214th Street. There was a request that those be larger estate lots or something. Okay. Billy's going to provide, I missed this, some sort of trail plan markup. What was that for?
Just trail markup plans that would match what they're offering to do in the power line easement for rear elevation architectural features, whether covered porches, patios, etc. It was specific to, if you want to write it down, give me 1 second. 7.3B. Yeah, something. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, close enough. 71A1E.
Yeah, and I had on there too that just to review the applicability of those rear facade enhancements, whether it's along just the transmission line or whether it includes facing trails.
Correct. And
as well.
He would like to see a drawing from me of, hey, if we're talking about some of the higher trafficked area trails, what's my assumption of what those high traffic trails are and where could that be? So happy to highlight and send.
Type A townhome. I think the note was to increase masonry standard for what exposed rear elevations. I'm not quite sure.
There's a few rear elevations that would have the eye line of the Monon. So anything that doesn't have coverage of a front facade and you have exposure to the back, just heighten those architectural standards.
Okay. There was discussion about bringing an exhibit showing the townhome relationship to the Monon, which would include sidewalks and tree canopy, how that all works together. Provide an example cross-section for the 14 to 16 foot shared path. And then the last discussion here about updating the four-story architecture, four-story townhome architecture to be more similar or compatible with the three-story townhome architecture. And then this ongoing conversation about the yellow area on south side of 206th Street, east of Horton Road, how that fits with the overall narrative of the Hortonville plan. And I think that's probably more really a discussion for staff to address when we get to that point of the Hortonville planning presentation. So probably not so much for the petitioner. Those were kind of my takeaways from like kind of to-do items or questions, and if you guys have other things to add.
Yeah, I'll add a few more items that I had on here. Just continuing the discussion regarding the 206th Street right-of-way, which we're working on right now. That transitions the northwest and northeast edges of Monon Corner as that transitions to the rear-loaded product along 206th Street. I believe we did address where exactly the recessed garage standard would apply. I believe that would be lot type B. Also discuss the builder mix ratio concerns, which is being worked on as well. Talked about the transition in housing types from existing residential to the village core. And I believe all of my other comments were covered by your assessment. So that's all I have.
Very good. I really do appreciate the level of detail and discussion from both John and from the commission. I appreciate you taking those instructions to heart, everybody, trying to get as much of this done this time as possible so that when we come back again, we are hopefully punch listing and getting the last couple of items from our side on this. So thank you.
Thank you.
John, very much. Thank you, staff and commissioners. With that, we are out of workshop items for tonight, much to my chagrin. Items that are being continued to a future meeting continues to be the Westfield Comprehensive Plan and then the Sugarleaf PUD. With that, reports and comments. Any reports from Plan Commission members to each other? Seeing and hearing none. City Council Liaison, Councilor McCarty.
Haven't met yet.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Board of Zoning Appeals, Dr. Keene.
We don't meet again till March.
Okay, we'll see you again in March. Plat Committee.
Quite likely the same report as BZA.
Yeah, nobody's meeting.
Don't know for sure yet.
Staff to us.
Nothing new since we met last, whatever day that was, Wednesday.
Yeah, 6 days ago.
Yeah.
Very good. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. McCarty, second by Mr. Bunkevist. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 9:18 p.m.